Alibama, como dice, di Alibama, di Alibama, di Alibama, como dice. Nuai, dili boy es gemak, dili boy es van mij gemak. Om daarop te slapen, die Alibama, die Alibama. Die Alibama, kom wat is je die Alibama, die Alibama, die Alibama, kom wat is je.
Hello and welcome to Wines of the World. My name is Anthony Metzger. On this voyage of discovery, we'll be going from country to country exploring all of the different wines, history, and stories related to the mysterious world of wines. So join me on this adventure to find out what the wine world is truly all about. South Africa, a mysterious country that lies on the bottom of the African continent. A country that is known for its precious metals. But diamonds and gold are not the only treasures that emerge from these soils, but also grapes, which produce some of the most interesting wines in the world. I bought a plane ticket, a video camera, packed my bags, and flew off to the opposite side of the world, by myself, to see if I can discover and reveal the most interesting stories about South African wine. At 3 times the size of Texas and with a population of 53 million, the Republic of South Africa sits high atop the most culturally diverse countries in the world. A contrasting mix of westernization and tribalism, land and sea, as well as urban and rural life. This southernmost part of the world has no shortage of opportunity for the steadfast and adventurous alike. To make quick friends here with the locals, look no further than a typical braai, the South African term for a barbecue party, where music and wine feature as prominently to partygoers as the grilled meats they so happily engorge. As I drink in the landscape before me, I can't help but wonder, what did it take for South African wine to get here today? Despite all the difficulties and challenges, how did the winemakers here succeed? To answer these questions, I now travel to the province of Western Cape in order to visit Hamilton Russel Vineyards. In the early 1970s, a grape-growing, wine-producing entrepreneur and explorer named Tim Hamilton Russel went out on a search for the best grape-growing soils in all of South Africa. After an extensive adventure, he found himself here in the Hemel en Arad Valley, meaning the Heaven and Earth Valley. It's located right here on the very edge of the wine-producing world. Anthony Hamilton, the son of Tim Hamilton, now owns the winery. He has invited me out for a traditional South African lunch, as well as to tell me about South African wines. But prior to visiting Anthony, he recommended that I get an aerial view of the African wineries and farms. So I did. I buckled in and ventured off into the sky to get a different view and perspective of South African wine country. when Anthony is not chasing off grape-eating baboons on his property, or traveling the world revealing the African treasure that he creates. You can find him on his wine farm, creating a wine that resembles rock and roll, blended with deep smooth bass and piano. His vineyard grows on ancient African elephant trails, in which he now rides his dirt bike, while sporting his Indiana Jones hat. He is a pioneer, a winemaker, and a world explorer. And sorry ladies, he is not single. Together with his wife, renowned chef Olive Hamilton Russel, they have invited me in for a traditional South African lunch. So what is a traditional South African lunch? Well, she explained it to me as foods that come from the local fields, orchards, vineyards, and seas. As all of the foods are sourced locally, recipes and sauces are influenced from cultures that you can find all over the world. They have presented me with such a magnificent spread that I'm wondering if the Queen of England will be joining us for lunch.
Please go for it.
Thank you very much. But in fact, it's just that the Hamiltons are some of the most gracious hosts in the entire country. After this amazing lunch, I will be going out to the olive grove with Anthony to talk about South African wines.
I'm Anthony Hamilton Russel, second generation owner of Hamilton Russel Vineyards. It's a business that my father started as a passion, lived in Johannesburg, went wine farming. 1975 he bought the land, the first wine came out in 1981.
Okay.
I was living overseas, as a lot of young South Africans were unhappy with the way the country was going. Okay. And when things changed, Mandela was released, I made the decision to return to the country and called my father up and said I'd like to get involved in the business. It was very small, it needed the next generation and growth, and invited myself back and eventually purchased it from him in 1994.
Great.
And that's how I got into the wine business.
With the end of apartheid came a flood of new business ventures, including New World winemaking.
What I see happening here, and it is happening already, is the industry is going to become increasingly quality focused, much less volume and production and cost focused. Right. And we're going to continue, unlike many countries, to offer not just one or two things that define South Africa, but a range of different things. Much as you think of France, you can't distill it down to 3 or 4 different varieties. Yeah. It's got something of everything. South Africa has a bit of that European sensibility to it. And that to me is what the sophisticated consumer of the future wants. The complexity in wine, the fact that wine expresses origin, not just grape variety. And South Africa has the foundations for that. So I see a great future for us.
To achieve a great future for his wine, Anthony looks to the distant past of winemaking history and incorporates one of its earliest traditions. Like the ancient Romans and Egyptians, he makes use of special clay pots to ferment his wine, while adding a unique South African twist.
Okay. So we developed these to have the same oxygen interaction as a wine barrel, but obviously there's going to be no vanillins, no toast, no spice or anything like that.
No flavor influence.
But the wine does develop on its lees beautifully. Something about the shape as well is beneficial. There's a natural stirring of the lees in here, certainly during fermentation. And then through subtle temperature changes, there's a sort of almost a natural churning of the wine over time. So we ferment the Chardonnay and age it in here for 9 months from our very oldest and most fragile blocks, the ones that we don't want to be overwhelmed by wood.
Sure.
And it's worked pretty well. These are lined with clay off the property, so we have the psychological feeling, probably doesn't do very much, that the wine is interacting with its own soil while it develops. Well, what I love about wine, and it sounds a touch new agey, but its ability to communicate the soul and personality of place. And if that place has a particular meaning to you, as this farm has for me, the ability to experience it through wine, to me, is something extraordinary.
What makes South African wine so much more different than the rest of the wines of the world? What's the true identity of a South African wine?
To me, the special thing about South African wine is Africa has always been here. When there was one continent in the world and everything separated out into the different continents, Africa stayed where it was. We have the oldest soils in the world. And basically, when you're drinking South African wine, you're tasting the essence of some of the most ancient soils that have existed on planet Earth, which is to me magic, and there's no other country that does it. The other thing is all of us share a common ancestor from most probably within a couple of 100 kilometers in here, definitely from the continent of Africa. So there's something of almost ancient relevance in drinking African wine.
This father and son winery in the Heaven and Earth Valley is the best example of how special South African wine truly is. From growing in soil that is millions of years old, to being one of the most southerly located wine estates on the incredible continent of Africa, Anthony Hamilton is the leading pioneer, as his father once was, in the African wine world. And it shows, as Hamilton Russel Vineyards creates one of the highest quality wines in the world. After visiting the Hamiltons, my adventure through South Africa takes me to a small local fishing port in Hout Bay. From a distance, the brightly colored boats resemble children's toys plastered onto a painted landscape. Seals, seals, seals everywhere. This huge chunk of volcanic rock certainly lives up to its reputation, as its entire surface is literally covered with these barking sunbathers. From where I am standing, it definitely looks like seal paradise, or perhaps one big dinner plate for Southern Africa's famed great white sharks. After waking up at 2 a.m. and driving for 2 hours through the pitch-black African night, I finally arrived at Gans Bay so that I could dive with Africa's great white sharks. You are never guaranteed to see any when you go diving, but I got very lucky as there were 14 great whites surrounding our boat at one time. One of these sharks I saw swim by was as big as a Suburban. So what role do great white sharks play in the winemaking process, you may ask? Well, for one South African man, they are the perfect security for his unique barrel of seaborne wine. In an environment where life-threatening storms are normal, great white sharks breed, two of the world's greatest oceans meet, and very little oxygen exists. You would think that wine, which is a living product, would have a hard time surviving. But wine innovator Dave Hidden took a leap of faith, embarking on a risky venture that has never been pursued before in the unpredictable world of wine, sinking one of his precious barrels of wine in a reef over a mile off of the most southern coast of the African continent. This fairy tale-like wine embarked on almost an unbelievable quest and can be known as the mysterious African wine. For me, Hidden Valley sounds very much like the destination of a long-lost treasure, buried deep within the midst of a classic adventure novel. And it definitely looks enough like the part 2, at least for a winery estate. With protected areas of some of the most impressive varieties of ferns and trees, this exotic landscape could fit right in with the latest Jurassic film. Needless to say, I am now simply stoked to hear what Dave has to share with me from his years of winemaking. So David, what is the most exciting part about working in the wine industry?
I think that a lot of it is quite exciting. To me, it's the unexpectedness. Every day is different. We have, for instance, beautiful grapes, beautiful crop, and then all of a sudden we'll get what we here in the Western Cape have as a black southeaster. And the wind will rip through the vineyards, and it can be quite vicious, and it can deplete your crop. Now, I don't know if that's so interesting. It's just like a hell of a challenge to deal with these things. And it makes you almost have to be flexible, thinking on your feet the whole time. And it's a very, very competitive industry. There's a lot of wine around out there. So the challenge is, how do you do this ages old, eons old tradition of making wine? What do you do that's different to make your wine different to the next person's wine, so that it attracts people to want to drink it.
And that is the question. Even with a unique location, climate, and soil properties, what else can you do to make your vintage flavors truly stand out? Dave tried the unthinkable and submerged his brand of winemaking into unconventional waters. In doing so, he not only stood out from the competition, but also revealed a truly creative side to his delicious portfolio of wines. Right now, I am on the very most southern tip of Africa. This is exactly where the Indian and Atlantic Oceans meet. This is the location in which Mr. Hidden decided to put his barrel of wine, in a reef where it can be protected by great white sharks from marine poachers. They let it mature out there for 15 months. And after 15 months, him and his crew came back, retrieved the barrel from the ocean, loaded it into their truck, and brought it back up into the mountains where their winery is. And after an anxious ride home, as you can imagine, the very first thing they did was crack that barrel and dip their glasses into it and had a taste. And what they said was that it blew away their imaginations. It really became an extraordinary wine created by the ocean. And well, I have the honor to try this wine with the winery owner himself, Mr. Hidden. So together, let's find out exactly what this wine really is. So Dave, we're here in front of your barrel that spent about 15 months underneath the sea.
Yep.
And this is the original barrel in which your Shipwreck Shiraz comes from.
That's quite correct. You can see, and it looks like it too.
It does look like it's been.
It looks pretty shipwrecked
part
to
of a
me.
Shipwreck,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Barnacles growing off of it.
Yeah, barnacles, but oysters. Yeah.
Very cool.
Sand, bit of sand here.
Very cool.
So it's got a lot of tactile sea-related issues on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
When an oak barrel full of wine is sunk to the bottom of the ocean, it ages and develops differently than a barrel of wine that matures on the surface of the earth. It essentially freezes in time, as the water hugging the barrel denies entry to oxygen. Though it may not be reaping the benefits of resting in the winery, something special is happening. It's slowly but surely absorbing and becoming one with its surroundings, as well as developing into one of the most unique wines on earth. What inspired you to wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to take a barrel of wine, I'm going to put it on the bottom of the ocean for 15 months?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Well, at the bottom end of the African continent is the Agulhas Lighthouse.
Okay.
Now, the Agulhas Lighthouse protects the shipping that heads around the bottom end of the African continent.
Yeah.
There are huge oil tankers, and there's a lot of shipping going around there right now. However, from 1848, that little lighthouse protected the shipping that went around there. I was standing outside that lighthouse and watching the power of the waves bashing into the rocks down below, and it's hugely impressive. I mean, it's a really stormy country. Where the oceans meet, you can imagine there's quite a lot of turbulence, and it's called the Cape of Storms. And I thought, well, here back in Stellenbosch, as you can see, because we're now standing here in Stellenbosch, it's quite more placid and more relaxed and so on. And these grapes here are certainly, they remind me of guys on holiday lying back in deck chairs smoking Havana cigars. Whereas the little guys down in Land's End, those guys are hanging on there for dear life, hoping they don't get blown out of the soil and actually just battling to survive. The inspiration of putting it into the sea was, it seems crazy to take these little guys that have fought their lives to actually produce themselves, to make themselves into grapes, to bring them all the way back to Stellenbosch to make the wine here in Stellenbosch at the cellar that we're visiting, Hidden Valley, today, and then go and put it in a barrel in the barrel cellar. So why don't we just put the wine in a barrel, and we put it under the sea, and we finish the process off under the sea.
So how did Dave accomplish the task of creating the most interesting wine in South Africa? Well, he has got the answer all laid out for us on his storyboard.
On the storyboard here is obviously pictures of the barge that we had to take the barrel into the sea. The barrel was inside this concrete block. 2.5 ton concrete block. There's the barge. At high tide, floated over the concrete block. Lifted it up with this A-frame here. You can see the A-frame. And then towed it 2 kilometers out to sea, to a place that Martin My professional diving friend said, right, you've got to put it down right here because that's where the great white sharks breed. Number one, nobody's going to go and dive there. Nobody's going to go and try and dig the cask out of here because the great whites breed there. They don't dive here. So that was the first thing.
Good security.
Yeah, good security there. We had 24/7 security cover.
Wow, that's good.
So here's Martin showing us exactly where it's got to go. Okay, here's a picture of the barrel with a barnacle on it, bit of the old rust and so on. And here's a picture of Emma, who we spoke to earlier, and the farm manager.
Sure.
And he's the man who had to grow the grapes. Johan Grobbelaar.
In your opinion, what kind of flavors or impact did the ocean make on this wine?
The influence that the wine had, the sea had on the wine, is it's a very, very, very slight salty tang to this wine.
Wow.
And when we taste it against the normal land matured wine, you'll be able to pick that up quite easily. And it's very subtle, very subtle. But cheers, all the best.
Cheers.
Tell me what you think of it.
All right.
Nice color.
Beautiful color. A vibrant purple, and usually so this one could age for a while. And because of the wax, there's a lot less oxygen reaching the bottle.
Absolutely.
So that's probably why.
Absolutely. So you're probably looking at you can get another 2-3 years out of this wine. Yep.
So this is the 2009 Syrah from the same vineyard, same winery,
same block.
Shipwreck Shiraz, except for this one just went through the normal winemaking process. Was not put in the barrel.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is the land matured non-sea wine.
All right.
Okay.
Oh wow.
The moment of truth.
Well, right away on the nose, I'm getting a difference. The Land's End, the wine that was matured here, I'm getting more of the oak influence in it. There's more of the barrel influence than I'm getting out of the Shipwreck Shiraz. I'm getting almost a little bit more fruit out of this. What do you? What's your influence?
100%.
Is that right? Okay.
I can see you know what you're talking about. No, absolutely.
That's the difference I'm getting out of it.
Oh, you hit it, spot on.
Yeah.
So, more fruit on the barrel under the sea. Fruitiness comes through because there's less oak influence.
Okay.
The more oak influence on the one that was land matured, in a normal barrel cellar. So that's quite right. And which one do you prefer?
I prefer the Shipwreck Shiraz.
Okay. Well, I'll go with that.
I know the story now, and it's the most incredible story in wine I've probably ever heard. So
well, that's good.
That does add to the flavor for me. So.
Well, it's the reason why you came all the way down to the southern part of Africa to find that out.
Across
Good
the
stuff.
planet. That's right.
And thanks for sharing this with me.
Oh, thank you.
Along my travels in South Africa, I learned that my favorite thing about wine is that it brings people together. It was the moments I was conversing and drinking wine with people along my journey that I realized this. If it weren't for my curiosity in South African wine, I probably wouldn't have been on the most southern part of the African continent, diving with great white sharks in search for wine. Or on the edge of the wine-producing world, in the Hamel and Arad Valley, drinking wine as the Egyptians once did. Or even enjoying wine out of a mason jar at a local pub with a man from Zimbabwe. Wine truly brings people together. From god-king rulers during the medieval ages to 21-year-olds at the bar, wine can be enjoyed by a variety of people from all over the world. Now I can say for sure that I leave with a deeper respect for South Africa and its rightful place here in the world of wine.